Happy lunch hour, guys. Okay, back to reality for me. PBJ left for home this morning, and so we had a great visit over the holidays here. It was nice to spend time with her. I apologize to all you guys for not giving you the updates as what's going on in the world, prepping ideas, how things affect you as much as possible. But like I've said many times, prepping is extremely important, but also living the life while you have it is extremely important because we never get yesterday back. So got to spend time with my daughter, which was a good thing. And so now it's back to reality. Hence here we are, lunchtime video. All right. So let's talk a little bit about the new Congress. We know the whole debacle we went through with getting Kevin McCarthy, Rhino as he is, as the Speaker, and the concessions that he made to the House Freedom Caucus to get the Speaker's position. Okay. Well, he agreed to put up to a vote a whole bunch of different things, some good, some maybe not so good. And again, how many times have you heard me say, can't think past here? And this goes for politicians as a whole. Now, one of the things that I think we'd all agree with is one of the concessions made was getting rid of these 87,000 new IRS agents. Okay? And just to give you an idea what that would be, that equivalates to 1,700 new IRS agents in every state. Now, who would those IRS agents be going after? They're not going after the billionaires and the millionaires and everything. They're going after the small business owners. They're going after the middle class and everything like that, and trying to squeeze a penny out of you so the government can get more money. You know that, I know that, and anybody with two brain cells knows that. Of course, that's not what the Biden administration wants to push. They're like, oh no, they're going to be doing this, or what? Yeah, whatever. Okay. So getting rid of those agents is a good thing. However, and on the surface, this sounds good, and you guys know where I stand on this, but they need to think past here. The Fair Tax Act has been introduced by Buddy Carter, who's a Republican representative from Georgia, okay, and it was seconded by Jeff Duncan, who's a Republican from South Carolina. They want to eliminate the IRS completely. And so that means get rid of income tax, get rid of estate tax, get rid of gift tax, you name it, okay? And go to a national sales tax. So a consumption tax. However much money you spend is what you're going to pay taxes on. And I agree, that is the fairest way to tax the public. However, there are some serious problems with this, okay? And I'm going to link this stuff below so you guys can read it, all right? Now, the Fair Tax Act has come up many times in front of Congress. Never seems to go to vote. This time it'll get to vote. But there's a big problem with it. Now, what do you guys pay for for sales tax in your state? Some states have no sales tax, say New Hampshire, for example. Okay. And when I lived in New Hampshire, hey, it was great, but property taxes were through the roof. A lot of people from Massachusetts go do the shopping in New Hampshire. Why? Because they'd save the money on the sales tax. Okay. So tax revenue comes from somewhere. And again, I want to get to how this affects you. So the state sales tax isn't going to change, but now you're going to add a federal sales tax. And in some states, it's 3%, it's 4%. I mean, here it's 9.5%. But again, like I've told you, we have no state income tax in Tennessee, and my property taxes, guys, were $1,068 for 3 acres. Okay, so our property taxes are dirt cheap. The state's got to come up with money somewhere. So the state of Tennessee uses a fair tax plan again. Okay, sales tax, which is good. However, the federal government now is going to, certainly not going to figure out a way for them to get less money. The proposal for the fair tax rate, the proposed national sales tax, would be 23%. Okay. Now I want to give you this as just a quick sidebar to this so you understand. The average tax rate, the average money that comes out of everybody, from Elon Musk's paycheck to the person collecting Social Security, and that's it, okay? Nothing else. The average income tax rate, how much the government gets out of our income, is 13.3%. Okay? So while this sounds all fine and dandy, we're going to get rid of the income tax. What they're actually doing is increasing the average tax rate by 10%. Just saying. Okay, if this fair tax proposal goes through at what they want. Now, think about this. Now you've got to add your state sales tax onto it as well, okay, which, like I said, for me is 9.5%. So if I want to go buy something for $10, give it by the end of the year, that'll be a gallon of milk, okay, I now will have to pay, what, $13.25 for that gallon of milk, because my tax rate is, my sales tax will be up somewhere around 32.5% between federal and state. Oh, but you won't have anything come out of your paycheck. Yeah, okay, well, they're not withholding that 32.5% from my paycheck, so my spending power would be less. Remember the other thing out of your paycheck, too. What still will be continuing to be withheld from your paycheck that they don't mention, okay, is Medicare and Social Security. Okay, so you're going to still have that money coming. You won't have the federal income tax withheld, but you'll still have Medicare and Social Security come out of your paycheck. Now add that on to what you're paying in a national and a state sales tax. Okay, fine. That $10 gallon of milk only cost you $12.30 in New Hampshire because you don't have any state sales tax. You just have to pay the federal. Getting my point here. The other thing is, who does that disproportionately affect? Well, that disproportionately affects the poor and the middle class, because what do the elites do? Oh, they buy a lot of stuff offshore. They're not out spending money as much per se. You know, Leonardo DiCaprio out on one of his many cruise ships isn't paying sales tax when he's out on his yacht somewhere coasting off, sailing off of Barbados somewhere. All right. So, yeah, tax havens, tax shelters, whatever would be, somehow, some way they're going to get. So this is not going to tax the people who have the most money. And mind you this, 97.1% of the income tax that's collected right now by the U.S., by the federal government, is collected from the rich. Just saying, when all this AOC crap of the rich don't pay their fair share, 97.1% of the tax revenue that's collected by the U.S. government right now is from the upper class. So this sounds all great about getting rid of the IRS so far, right? Getting rid of income tax. Well, let's look at the next thing. And this one I can go back to personal experience on. One of my first jobs after I got out of the Army, and I've told you guys about this before, was I worked for the Illinois Department of Employment Securities, State Unemployment Office. Okay? And my job was to collect the taxes from the businesses that didn't pay their taxes. And trust me, this was just Illinois, and there was hundreds of thousands of these accounts, delinquencies ranging from $50 to tens of thousands, okay? I mean, at one point, I remember collecting from a law office that they had like $70,000 in back taxes that they owed. I remember collecting from Snap-on Tools. They had something like $13,000 worth of back taxes. Okay, so yeah. So what's going to happen when every one of these, the little liquor store or the corner convenience store, the 7-Eleven, the guy who owns the little coffee shop doesn't pay the taxes? Now we're going to need all these IRS agents to go collect all that money, right? Okay. So guess what? We're back to this scenario of, oh, gee, we abolished the IRS. Now we need to come up with a tax collection agency to do it. So here's where the next problem comes in. let's say, for example, this passes. Okay. Well, one of the first things would have to happen is they've got to repeal the 16th Amendment, which allows the government to collect income tax. Okay. You know what it takes to repeal an amendment. You need, 2/3 of Congress and 3/4 of the states and yada, yada, yada. So that makes that difficult. Because if they don't, okay, if they say, well, we still have the authorization to do it, we just aren't going to do it. Right? And I mean, that's very possible. Just because you can do something doesn't mean you have to. They can leave the 16th Amendment there and say, yeah, but we're just not going to collect income tax anymore. Okay. And so 2023 rolls around and they say, okay, national sales tax in 2024, and 2025, and 2026, and then 2027 rolls around and go, you know what? We're not collecting enough money. So the government goes, well, you know what? Why don't we go back to start collecting an income tax again? We have the authorization by the 16th Amendment. And now all of a sudden we have a 23% income tax. And guess what? Sales tax. And guess what? Gee, we're going to put the income tax back in. Have you ever known the government to go, you know what? We're collecting too much money. Let's give it back. Sure, we'll do tax cuts. Anybody's taxes ever really cut? Okay, it's just moved from one place to another. They're still collecting money. So you get into that issue is the only way possible would be if they repeal the 16th Amendment and put in a new amendment to the Constitution prohibiting the United States from ever collecting income tax again. That's how that would have to be done. But even then, you're still paying all this income tax or all this sales tax. And like I said earlier, that's a 10% increase. You think the government's going, gee, we're going to make it. No, it's the shell game. There's no more income tax. Woohoo! Your sales tax is 23%. Oh, yeah, but you know what? That's okay. Now, sales tax would be fine if it was kept at 2%, 3%, or whatever, but that's not the game plan. Okay. Well, you're only paying taxes on the money you spend. Sure, that would maybe encourage people to save money. Okay. It certainly would encourage people to not spend as much, on stupid stuff, because when you go, oh, God, I've got to pay all this income tax. Well, let's look at some downsides to it. Put a lot of accountants out of business. Put all those people who get seasonal jobs doing tax work. They don't have a job anymore. Okay, so just those little things. The other little loophole in here, there is no business-to-business tax. So, for example, General Motors has to buy a whole lot of steel to make cars, right? Let alone plastic and rubbers and silicon, semiconductors and whatever it would be. There is no business-to-business tax. So GM doesn't have to pay any sales tax to their suppliers to get that steel. But now when GM sells the car, you have to pay taxes. So the businesses of the world, or of the United States at least, wouldn't have any income tax. What will that do? That will make their profits go up significantly, which would make the stock market go up significantly, or at least should. The theory by the Fair Tax Act people is that will entice companies to reduce their prices. Oh, we're making enough profit. Let's reduce our prices. We don't need to make that much profit. Have you ever heard a company that says, we don't need to make this much profit? I mean, I'll give you very few examples. I mean, the guy who started the brokerage firm A.G. Edwards, and this goes back 30 years, his theory was he was going to take $1 million salary, and that was it, okay? And then everything else was going to be passed down to the customers. Do you really think Jeff Bezos is going, you know what, I'm going to reduce the prices of everything on Amazon. I don't need to make that much money. Or Elon Musk is going to say, I'm going to reduce the price of Teslas, or pick a company. No, they're going to keep the prices right where they are. You're just going to pay it because you always have, okay? And they're going to make more profit. So there's that problem, okay? It's not going to do anything to help us. Then you get into what their solution for the poor is, because you suddenly add 20, because remember, the poor get tax rebates, okay? They're not paying a whole lot in, and then most of the middle class gets tax rebates too. they're not paying in as much. If anything, by the time all said and done, you get your, you have $5,000 withheld from your paycheck, and at the end of the year, you get a $5,000 tax refund, however it would be. Okay, so you're not really paying that much, or maybe a minuscule amount in. So no, so their idea is to give a prebate check to everybody, okay? Even the billionaire gets this prebate check. So this is an idea where it ties into UBI, okay? And where everybody's going to get a check for a couple of $1,000s a month. And again, I'll link this to it so you guys can go read this up. All right. But, when you're talking about everybody getting free money and then trying to collect it, which is going to be difficult, this is a train wreck. Yes, the tax code has to be fixed, but even though this is coming from Republicans, they aren't thinking past the tip of their nose. And you know me, and I've told you many times, if I see something that's stupid, and I don't care which party it comes from, I'm going to call it out. This idea is stupid, okay? With the prebates and the high tax rates and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. They'll sell it like it sounds good. We're getting rid of income tax. We're just going to go to a sales tax. And everybody go, yes, cool, finally. Until they tell you what that sales tax rate is and how they're going to administer it. And then when they come back and say, well, now we're adding an income tax onto it and all. Think past the tip of your nose. Go out further. Never in my life, never in anybody's life, have I ever seen the government going, yeah, we need less money. Have you? Pinball out.